All right, Dan. Thanks for coming.
Hey, this is great.
Yeah.
First time being here in a while.
I think well, so far you get the travel award. Farthest.
I'd say San Diego to Fairfield.
That's right. That's right. So how's it feel to be back?
Yeah, it's been fun. I mean, first of all, I didn't remember how to get here, so it was a good thing for GPS.
Yeah. have you had a chance to see the campus
Not
yet? Or
yet.
you're going to go after?
I'll drive after.
Yeah, I think you're going to be
I'm
surprised.
sure it's changed quite a bit.
Incredible.
I was here about, I don't know, 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's unbelievable what kind of construction.
Well, the changes since I graduated in 1966 are enormous.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, let's talk about 1966 and maybe a couple of years before that.
Right.
You are one of our honored interviewees because you were there at the beginning of our 50-year history. So it's very special that you're able to be with us to share your memories on that. So you were actually on the very first team.
Yeah, one of those founding fathers, I guess.
That's great.
Like
wow.
Benjamin Franklin. But yeah, it was actually my sophomore year, 1963. I played freshman basketball, and then I wasn't playing varsity, so I was looking for something to do, being an old football player in high school. So I don't forget exactly how it I got involved, but I think it was either Bob Batch comes to mind. I ran to him and he said, "Well, we're trying to form a rugby team," and it was Peter Fallon and Jeff Campbell, and I think they were the two that really tried to get it going. So I do remember the first meeting, and Dr. Kenyon, who was the English professor, who you can't forget because he had this tweed sweater, which I think he wore all the time. It was like his rugby sweater or something. And curly hair, I mean, kind of a pretty interesting guy, and started talking about rugby. Now, none of us knew anything about it, right. What the game was, none of the rules, obviously. And we had, I don't remember, it was 15 of us or something like that. And there was no field, and we had no money. I mean, it was a real startup company, kind of no money, a lot of enthusiasm. And we got together for first practice and started going over some of the rules, and that's how it kind of started.
Wow.
Yeah, it was fun time.
That's amazing that it just kind of gave birth.
It just came together.
Yeah. So as far as like the organizing aspect of it, you had to reach out to make schedules with other colleges. For the most part,
it was not organized at all. Yeah. I mean, we reached out, and the games we played. Back then, rugby wasn't very popular, and the teams that played were mostly the Ivy League schools. Yeah. So it was the Browns, Harvard, Yale, Columbia. So I mean, we played most of those. I think Villanova had a team. I don't remember the whole schedule, but certainly it was. We had to reach out and get to play. And the most interesting thing was the field. The first few games were up on the field across from Loyola Hall, and then we started to find another location, which was down near the pond, which became our advantage because it was up and down hills. You played there, so you remember. And the second half was brutal for the opposing team because if they were running, we always try to get there was a bigger hill that you went up. So always get that in the second half. So they'd be running out of steam, towards because it was no substitutions, timeouts, whatever it was.
And we knew where the manhole cover was.
And the manhole cover, that's right. Steer in that direction.
It's amazing, though, that you guys were able to pick up so quickly the game in the pre-internet, pre-video, I mean, you didn't have TV to look at. You didn't have really much of a model to base your learning the game on.
Yeah, none at all. I mean, it was really just learning by example and just playing. I mean, we didn't know any of the rules. Right. I mean, we probably violated half of them. I mean, which reminds me of the seven-a-side tournament we played in Van Cortlandt Park. I don't remember what year it was, but I think it was the first year, actually. And I can't remember if we won or not, but it seems to me we definitely played the final game, and it was against the Old Blues, which was, the traditional great, and they had everybody from England, and they were rugby players, and we were like a ragtag team, But so we did, because we have been adapting the game a little bit. Obviously, you know, the passing the ball that way was one, but a lot of us were ex-football players, so we would run up the sidelines and throw a pass across field and run up the other sideline and throw it back. Drove them crazy. They're going, that's not the game. We said, well, it's not against the rules. So yeah, I think I'll have to find out from, what's his name, from Gimp, if you know, he knows all the history, if we won that game or not.
Yeah, that's funny. I can kind of picture that.
Yeah, I mean, it was great, because we had speed. You had,
well,
Siasi was fast, Al Sullivan was fast, Bob Batch was fast. I mean, they were very fast. So we would, when you got open field like that and you get away from everybody, we would scored.
Yeah.
It was fun.
And when you think about, you know, the basics of the game, the basic elements, you know, the speed, like you said, the running, tackling.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not anything that you need to be taught.
No.
You know, I mean, it's that's really interesting to hear about. So your practices, were they full out scrimmages?
Yeah, I mean, you know, from what I remember, it was a good workout. That was the key. The conditioning was the real key, because training on that field, we got in tremendous shape.
Right.
And I mean, I think that was one of the key, because it was, as you know, a long game, and up and down those hills, you had to be in pretty good shape.
Right.
But yeah, it was the basics of tackling and trying to learn the game. I mean, we did fine. It was I don't forget all the exact scores in the games, but
yeah, you got right in there with the New York teams.
We got right in there with all the
colleges, and
exactly.
Started off.
Who's Fairfield?
50-year history that's still going strong. So what about? I mean, you were you were on the basketball team here, baseball player.
Yeah.
What was it? About rugby? You were an established athlete, varsity athlete here. What was it about rugby?
Well, rugby was
took
more
you,
like
to a different
sport.
Well,
rugby, kind of rugby is. I look at my career. Rugby's kind of the entrepreneurship. We were a bunch of guys that got together and with no money and put a lot of sweat equity in it to start this thing. So my experience in life is that I've been in Silicon Valley now 30 years. I've started up 10 companies, and it's the same thing. You do it with an idea. You don't have any money. You put a lot of sweat equity, and you work hard. So it's kind of like the rugby. And it's kind of, I look to that as one of these, take a risk and don't worry about it. And it kind of, it's part of kind of my life. So I can relate to that as a great experience, knowing nothing about it, learning it, and we did well. So it's doesn't get any better than that.
That's right. So you're one that, that's a question I had down the list here. You're one that would subscribe to the notion that rugby does prepare you for life after college, for things that can influence your own personal goals in the future. So you explain that very well.
I think yes. As I said, it's kind of you don't know what you're getting into, right? You got a lot of passion, which you have to have, and you got to take a risk. And you got to put the sweat equity into it and make it work. I mean, that's the whole basis of Silicon Valley and technology. Kids today are still doing it. Kind of like you have an idea, follow through and do it.
Yeah.
And rugby we didn't know anything about it, and we made it work. And it evolved to be a great tradition here at Fairfield.
That's right. That's right.
I would have never known that at the time, obviously.
Yeah. Well, speaking of traditions, can you think of any traditions that that you guys latched onto? I mean, the game of rugby, the sport rugby, has inherently within it certain traditions, social traditions, and the camaraderie, not just among the team, but among the opponents. You clap each other off the field and that kind of thing. So did you guys pick up on that?
Well, I mean, again, young college kids, and the beer drinking and the partying was a big part of the whole rugby scene. I mean, I do remember we played several games in Van Cortlandt. There was a bar right near Van Cortlandt, and we spent a lot of time there. But getting to that, I mean, one of the things that we did learn from Dr. Kenya were all the rugby songs, which we had no clue about. So, like, if I was the Marion kind, and thank the Lord I'm not, sir, and all the words that go with that.
Yeah.
But we certainly partied pretty heavy, and that reminds me of a couple of key stories, memorable stories. Actually, the most memorable to me were these two. One was John Schwanhouse, who was the scrum half, went through the whole season with no injury, and we're at the firehouse, drinking up heavy, and he gets, a little wasted, goes into the toilet, starts to toss his cookies, and the toilet seat hits him in the head, and he got stitches. So that was the memorable event. In another one, and I don't remember when this was, but again, we're down the firehouse, and we're, again, drinking up a storm, and we get the great idea to turn our fire engine on, and we drive it through the door. So I think that was the end of our firehouse days. But those were certainly, fun events.
That's funny. Wow. Well, let's ask you about Doug first, because I want to get into a couple of the early leaders of the club, right, too. But and Doug certainly was, obviously, huge in that department. He's revered. What made Doug special?
Doug was just a tough person. He was like 5'7", 190, and a bull. I mean, he just run into you anytime, any place. And that's what great enthusiasm, great passion, and just tough. I mean, he was there was no he was going to kill you if he could. And so that was kind of like when things were down, Doug would just come up with some great play. So that's really Doug I remember.
Yeah.
But he had some other great players. I mean, Al Sullivan, I used to call him Silky Sullivan because he was real fast, and he was small too. He wasn't anywhere near Doug's size, but he was quick. And then Bob Batch was like a deer. So we had some very fast players, and then we had the Jeff Campbell and John Bender, which were the tall guys that were on the line. So yeah, it came together pretty well. Tom Petticoat, all real good athletes.
Yeah. In terms of leadership, Doug obviously was, from what I've heard.
I think because of his, in any sport, there's a natural leader because you're the guy that's, trying. So that's why I think Doug was, he was very determined. But we all were. But Doug was just a unique kid.
Yeah. Chris Grauert was communicating to me a couple of words that might sum up Dan Gatti, and I'm gonna mention some of these, and maybe you could comment on these titles, these descriptions.
We'll do the best we can.
Yeah. Well, you're a founding father. What does that mean?
Well, it doesn't. I was just happy to be there at the time. It doesn't. That's. Yeah. It was just a fun. New experience, and I look back at that as unique now. That is kind of this tradition has grown, and so I guess I'm honored to be one of the founding fathers.
So and you were a fullback. You said you were an all-star fullback and a crushing tackler. I guess those that
crushing tackler. I used my head the wrong way. Got nailed a couple of times trying to tackle somebody in a football tradition. So. It was, I also had good hands, so that was, being a fullback was good. I could kick, so that was, learning again on the way.
Right.
Now, I was like the deep safety, if you want to think about it. Yeah. That's what fullback is.
Yeah. Your relationship with referees, he said that you're a professional ref cusser.
Yeah, well, growing up in a quiet place like the Bronx, we had different vocabulary, which include a lot of F-bombs. So there were two events I do remember. One, when I got tackled and my nose hit the goalpost, and my nose is still screwed up today. And I let out a couple of Fs and I got penalized right away. So, but I think the more memorable one was at Brown, and I was kicking a goal, and it missed, and I said, MF, and the ref said, penalty. I said, what, therefore? I said, penalty. I said, what are you breaking my balls for? Penalty. So, we got a series of penalties right there in a row. This is a gentleman's sport. I think I gave another one.
Well, follow that up with the next description. He said you were the choir master. Not choir boy, but a choir master.
I don't know if I was that. I was probably noisy for sure, few beers, we all get a little rowdy. So, we took everything to an extreme. Let's say that.
Yeah, and a few other phrases here that I don't think we need to get into detail on. But let's say colorful, and and you liked to party and that kind of thing. So
Yeah,
that,
we sure did.
yeah, it sounds like you did back then.
Still like to party. You know?
Yeah. So how did the club do as far as like your place in the school, in the among the students, among the administration? I mean, were you just out there on your own?
I mean,
were people aware of you?
I think, the first year or two, I don't think anybody was aware of us. We kind of were just doing our own thing. Then I think it really probably took traction after we graduated. I think if I think where the club really got its recognitions were with Chris, with the Growett Field. That started to become more recognized. But the early years seemed to me we were just kind of on our own. I don't know if there was a huge following. I mean, I don't remember, lots of, the first year was a handful. Then the second year we got some more folks. And then, we were always recruiting to get, I think the first year we had one team. I don't think we had more than one team. And then the second year we had two, and maybe the third year we had three teams. So it started to build up. So it just took its natural course of, and was mostly word of mouth, which is, it's kind of like business today. You start at a groundswell, but then it picked up later. And today it's evolved to a real tradition, to what it is. But I didn't, and I think even when you were there, I don't know if that was the case. It was kind of still it's kind of a startup deal.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was there, it was in pretty good, established shape, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, you come in as a freshman, you don't really, look at, how deep is their history or what's going on.
Right.
You just,
there's something to do.
Yeah. And the thing that and I don't know, maybe you can speak to this a little bit about your experience. I was always very impressed by the way the club brought in new people and welcomed new people without judging, without any kind of period of you got to prove yourself or any of this stuff. It was just like, come on in and play, be one of us, and not just on the field, but around campus. I don't know.
No, that's a great point. That's true, because we were. There wasn't any. You had to have some certain status to be part of it. Just come on. Anybody want to join? Have fun. And there's always some position to play, and you can join in. And we always have the social aspects and the partying. So yeah, I think that's right. It was from that point of view a very. That's actually a good point, because it was really. Students making this happen versus some program that was an official program like the baseball, basketball, and other sports. So from that point of view, yeah, it was pretty open, and even that whole tradition carries on with the opponents and whoever plays rugby. I mean, even today when I say I played rugby, my nephew played rugby at Susquehanna, and I was telling him about it. They say, "Oh yeah, you can see the smile on his face because it's a rugby," and. Everybody has. Well, everybody who plays understands that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's good. Toughest opponents? Can you remember?
Well, I think it had to be Old Blue. I know, just because they were like pros at the time, and they were really the Columbia Old Blue. They were really seasoned players, and they were definitely tough. But I think we held our own again. I have to find out from the GIMP if we would have lost that game.
Yeah,
and certainly, the Harvards they were the guys that played rugby. So maybe Villanova was one that was like us, but I think the Ivies we played were definitely that was rugby. They were playing rugby, but there weren't many teams back then.
Right.
I think if there was 50 across the country, that'd be a lot. So.
But I remember shortly after you left, I think I was a freshman. I remember we had gotten Sports Illustrated at my house, and I just remember seeing this article about Old Blue. And Sports Illustrated had them as number 3 in the country. I don't know how they figured that out, but that's the season that we beat them.
Is that right?
Yeah,
oh, great.
Our A team beat them. They were pissed.
Of course they would be pissed. yeah. Who's Fairfield?
Right. They used to wear all black uniforms,
right?
Just like the All Blacks, New Zealand. And when they kicked off. They screamed as they came down the field. I don't know if that.
They were formidable. No question about it. I remember that 7-aside against them. They were just impressive looking. which is, comes back to the Doug Siassi and the guys. We don't care. We'll take them on.
That's it. Looking back, what would you say Fairfield Rugby has meant to you?
Well, I think, the points I made before, it really comes down to this, entrepreneurial spirit, the fact that you can just get together and do something and organize it, and, you're doing it with, guys you want to be with, friends, and you make something happen. I mean, that to me is, it's really the American spirit, and it's all about taking initiative, hard work, figuring out how to do it, making it happen, and to take the success you get out of it, whatever, and winning or losing, as long as you're playing the game hard, you're having fun, and after the game it's over and you have a good time, which is really interesting because it reminds me of the game 2 weeks ago when Baltimore beat New England and Belichick walks off the field with this attitude. That's like immature, He should have played rugby with us because when the game's over, it's over. You don't worry about it. And the real, it's playing the game. It's not everything else. Winning, yeah, you want to win, but you give it your hardest, and whatever turns out, it doesn't. That's it. And then you go out and have a good old time and shake hands and drink beer, and it's. I think the whole social aspect of it, and the fact that you can, there was no, in terms of people playing, as you said, anybody was welcome, and it was, a great experience. It really was.
Well said. That was good. Thank you. Now, is there anything that
No,
we
I
missed,
think,
or anything that, you've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, I think I've covered most of the things.
Enlightened us.
It's been a while back. I'm really actually looking forward to this 50th reunion and getting in, back and seeing a lot of the old folks. I mean, I know one thing that this has really helped is getting connected again. Probably last year when it first started getting around, there would be a reunion. Jeff Campbell told me about it, and then, then a couple emails came around, and it kind of expanded, and so I finally got a chance to talk to like John Bender, who I hadn't talked to in years, and Petticoat and I talk all the time now. I actually called him last night about Go Ravens because he's a Baltimore fan. So I think this has been a good catalyst in getting everybody back together, and then meeting. I've never met you before, and I'm sure I'll get a chance to meet a lot of the the rugby players over the years, and that'll be a great event.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to it.
Good.
Hey,
Thanks, Dan.
That's great.
Great job.
Good.